Guys, have you ever looked at your bird's feathers and wondered why they might be looking dull or discolored, maybe having lines in them and that sort of thing? Well, that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Today's video is about bird stress bars. So bird stress bars are not only unsightly on the feathers, but they're also an indication that something's probably wrong in either your bird's health, mental health, or in your bird care routines. And so we'll talk about that today. So I know you love your pet. I mean, one of the things I love about my pets is their beautiful feathering. They're so intellectual and smart and easy to train. They've got, dynamic personalities, and they're so social and funny that, they just make a unique pet that's a little bit different than my relationship with my dogs. So I get it, and when your pet's feathers start kind of looking stressed out and unkempt and that sort of thing, then, without specialized bird care, then, you need to kind of pay attention to that so that you can know, hey, I need to take some action to help my bird, to help improve my bird's feather conditions. Because one of the first signs that something's going wrong with your bird is the condition of its feathers. So, how do you know if your bird's stressed out? Because we call these stress bars for a reason. So a stressed out bird is going to have kind of abnormal behavior. Instead of being their usual, jovial, animated, exploring self, you might notice them being very nervous or aggressive. You might notice them engaging what's called self-harm behaviors, like pulling out their own feathers, over preening, under preening, not taking care of themselves. You might notice that their feather condition starts going downhill. They're not as vibrant and beautiful as they used to be. Their feathers are breaking off and just look unsightly. So let's take a deep dive into an action plan that you can take to help improve your bird's feather condition. Now, first of all, I'm Diane Burrows. I'm the founder and CEO of birdsupplies.com, and that's a company that has a range of science-backed parrot wellness products. Things from bird collars for feather pluckers to a range of supplements. And then, of course, I provide behavior consultations, courses, and that sort of thing. Lots of blog posts that you can resource and reach out to learn how to care for these exotic pets. I mean, there's no other pet or animal on the planet that has feathers like this. I mean, we thought dinosaurs did, but who knows for sure. Our dogs and cats have systems that are related to mammals just like us, and so they're much easier to take care of, and they're domesticated animals, so they've become accustomed to humans being the center of their flock. Whereas our pet birds, our exotic animals, they're only a few generations away from living in the rainforest amongst thousands and thousands of flock mates. And, every single system in their body is unique to the bird's body, and it's designed to allow them to fly. And so that's why birds are exotic pets, and that's what makes them a little harder to take care of. The other things that make them a little harder to take care of is that they're so intelligent. They've been found to have the intelligence of a 4 to 5 year old child, and they're so active, and they have such a high metabolism. So those are some of the reasons birds are a little bit harder to take care of. Now, getting back to the feathers, which is what today's topic is all about, let me give you some amazing facts about feathers, because they are unique to birds, any bird species. And so birds have very specialized feather follicles. Feather follicles are what each and every feather grows out of, just like the follicles in your scalp. But birds' follicles are much more sophisticated than the follicles on our scalp, because they have little tiny muscles inside of each and every one of them, and your bird can actually kind of force its feathers to stand out and move at any angle. So imagine having 1,300 to 3,000 feathers on your body, and you can move them all in unique directions to achieve flight, to attract a mate, or anything like that. So it's really a unique system of their feathers, that their feathers serve for them. Another interesting fact about feathers is they're like a high-tech space age style coat, if you will. They act as a raincoat because they because birds have a printing gland at the base of their tail. Many of our pet birds do. That emits an oil that when the bird is engaging in its daily preening activities, that it'll get that oil from the preening gland and rub a little bit of it on each and every feather, and that acts as a raincoat. It's a waterproofing thing. So when you see these birds like ducks, you know, that can swim in the water, it could be ice cold water, and you're wondering how come they don't freeze to death, you know, in that pond or what have you. It's because their feathers act not only as a raincoat, but as a winter coat. When feathers are kind of stacked on top of each other, it's kind of like, you know, applying layers like we do here in Colorado. Also, those feathers act as sunblock. So, you know, several layers of these feathers with the printing oils on them, you know, keep the bird's skin healthy and, you know, free from sunburn and keeps their skin supple and stuff. And then the feathers act like a coat of armor, if you will. In other words, when these feathers are kind of stacked up, you'll notice that the shaft in the middle is a little hard, and so, you know, it just kind of protects the bird's body. Birds have a pretty fragile body. Their bones are very lightweight. Their skin is very thin. All of that in effort to keep their body very lightweight so that they can achieve lift and fly. Now, the last fact about the last thing about feathers is that they actually make kind of a fashion statement. That is how the male and females attract each other, is with a healthy, vibrant feathers that are species-specific coloration and not broken, you know, no stress bars and that sort of stuff. And so they act as kind of their, you know, sexual calling, if you will. So another thing about feathers that's so interesting is they grow in kind of like our baby teeth. So the feathers start to emerge, you know, new growth starts to emerge from the skin. And at that point, the feather is more looking like the pin. It's all surrounded by this keratin sheath, and it pushes out the old feather. And then the feather keeps growing, you know, wrapped in that keratin. It takes about 3 weeks to 4 weeks for a healthy feather to fully emerge to this full length once a bird molts the old feather out and the new one's coming in. So this is a feather that was molted out just this morning on my Moluccan Cockatoo. And as you can see, it's in good condition. There's a little bit of damage, but you know, it's probably a year old. This feather's been preened over and over again for, you know, 365 times, I guess, if it were to be preened every single day. So that's in a pretty good shape. Now, the feathers have different parts. They have these insulating parts down here that are kind of fluffy, and some feathers are down feathers. They have this shaft that runs down the middle. And as the feather is growing in, this is actually a giant vein, if you will, that feeds blood to all of these little parts of the feathers to give it the nutrients it needs and to grow beautiful. So these feathers are actually about 90% protein. So your bird needs an optimum diet of, you know, proteins, amino acids, all kinds of nutrients, calcium, and what have you, in order to grow a feather like this. If the nutrition stops being supplied for even a day or so or less, then you'll see what's called a stress bar at that age where the feather was when it was growing. So if you look at the picture at the beginning of this slide or this video, you'll see red macaw feathers that have lots of stress bars on them, and they were broken off, and they're just kind of like white lines that go across the width of the feather, because the feather is growing, you know, in, and then that as the keratin falls off, then these barbules kind of lay down and stuff. So when a bird is preening a feather, really what it's doing is that each and every one of these little, I mean, there's like little tiny, I can't even separate it because it's about the size of the width of my hair. But each one of these has little hooks on them where they hook together. And when the bird is preening its feather through its mouth, it is actually realigning each and every one of these barbules, if you will, so that they lay just perfect. They're getting the dirt off of them. And if you notice that a bird that knows how to properly preen, it's going from one feather to the next. They might work on one feather for 2 seconds at a time. And that way they can get to they can realign and clean all 3,000 of their feathers, you know, in a half a day or whatever. So that's the amazing facts about feathers. Almost think of these barbules as a zipper. You know, when you're zipping up a zipper and the little hooks hook in, that's what the bird is doing when it's preening its feathers. But when it has the stress bars in them, those parts where the barbule stopped growing because the bird experienced stress that day, where the feather growth is wherever the stress bar is, then, you know, that feather is prone to be unhealthy. It's prone to being more apt to break and that sort of thing. So what happens is that a stressful event will happen while the feather's growing in. The feather, or the body will actually divert blood from that shaft in the feather, and the feather stops growing properly. Those barbules are not growing together. The barbules they stop growing. And that's that line that you see in the feather. You know, the bird could have, you know, multiple stressors throughout the 3 or 4 weeks that this feather's growing in. And so that feather would be really compromised, and the bird wouldn't be able to, you know, insulate itself with the feathers. It wouldn't have that sunblock or that raincoat effect. None of its flock mates or, you know, similar birds are going to be attracted to it as a mate because it looks unhealthy and it's not going to be able to rear young. That particular bird that has that compromised feathering isn't going to be able to feed the young and take care of it like a good healthy bird will. So when you see those stress bars, that's really an indication that something's going on that's stressing your bird out enough that it disrupted the feather growth and created a bird that doesn't have healthy feathers. Now, if a bird doesn't have healthy feathers, they're not going to be able to fly very well because air is going to get through those lines. And so they're going to start getting malnourished and all of that. So it's not a good idea to let your bird go on and on with you know, stress bars in its feathers. And if you notice that there are stress bars in the feathers, the first thing you want to do is get a good physical exam. You want to rule out any major medical illness that might be going on with the bird. There are a couple of, you know, feather disorders that we hear about frequently. One of them's that macaw wasting disease. But most birds come out, you know, in relatively good health. They're probably in the early stages of what we would call, you know, issues with parrot wellness. And in, you know, in this diagram here, you'll notice that there are 6 different areas of parrot wellness, bird wellness, that the Richard M. Schubel School of Veterinary Medicine in California have uncovered as being really critical to a bird's physical and emotional health. And so let's go through those briefly in this little video, because these are the things that you would want to optimize to make sure that your bird is growing beautiful and healthy feathers, and that it's that you've really totally optimized all the wellness so it can actually be an exotic bird. So the first one that they uncover is preventative health care. Birds have a tendency to hide illnesses, injuries, and pain, and you don't even know that they're sick unless you really know what to look for and you're weighing them on a regular basis. So the first sign that a bird is starting to go downhill is their weight. Is they're losing a little bit of weight and their feathers are looking compromised. But if you catch a disease process early, whether it's a malnutrition issue or what have you, then you can, you know, turn it around much easier with preventative health care than if you wait years and years and don't get, you know, preventative care. Just like as a woman, I would never go without my annuals, you know, because you want to catch diseases early. You want to do the same thing with your bird. Now, the second thing they talk about is nutrition. And, you know, if you stop and think about it, birds are from rainforest and jungle regions around the equator. And these are, you know, very lush environments with thousands and thousands of different kinds of fauna and plant life and seeds and sproutings and flowers and all kinds of things for these birds to eat. Their mom and dad have to literally teach them which plants and vegetation are safe to eat and which aren't, which is why it's so hard for us as parrot caretakers to teach our birds to eat vegetables, because we don't know that we have to actually model it for them. But there've just been a lot of myths about parrot nutrition. We used to feed them chicken food. That's where all the research was done when I started in the pet business, pet bird business 25 years ago. All of the research was on chicken food, feeding parrots chicken food and seeds and stuff. Well, you don't find that kind of stuff in the rainforest. You don't find these ultra-processed pellets in the rainforest either. What you find is uncooked, raw vegetation that these birds are eating, nuts and sprouts and herbs and flowers and vegetation and such. And so feeding your parrot correctly is probably one of the best things that you can do for it. There's a group here on Facebook called the Avian Raw Food Group. There's also some cookbooks. There's a lot of resources on my website, birdsupplies.com, that will help you learn how to properly feed your exotic pet. And, like I said, we're finding that birds don't thrive with, these ultra-processed pellets that really all the vitamins have pretty much been cooked out of them in the manufacturing process. But they do thrive much better on raw, uncooked, plant-based foods. Now, the third thing that the Richard M. Schubert School of Avian Medicine talks about is behavioral training. So as I had talked about earlier when I was talking about nutrition, mom and dad spend, months and months teaching their young what's safe to eat. They also spend months and months teaching their young how to get along in life in a flock in the rainforest. Just like you and I spend years, teaching our children how to thrive and be responsible and successful with their lives. Birds do the same thing. But when we get a pet bird, a bird that has been bred by breeders that, are maybe more money hungry, if you will, than actually looking at the pet as a, long-term living being, those pets may not have been trained to have natural parrot behaviors. So they don't know how to forage. They don't know how to eat correctly, and they refuse to eat their vegetables and their plants and stuff. They don't know how to preen, and just any number of parrot natural behaviors they just don't know how to do unless we teach them. So that's why behavior training is so important. We have to kind of parent our parrots. Really, one of the things we have to parent them for is enrichment. So birds need a lot of enrichment, and since they're still exotic pets, they still have a strong need to do things like forage for food, engage in a lot of exercise. Birds have an incredibly high metabolism. They can have 60 heartbeats per minute practically, and so their metabolism's very fast. And when you hear the term "live hard and play hard," work hard and play hard. Parrots, their daylight awake hours are very active, and they need long hours of sleep a night too. So parrot enrichment is really important, teaching your birds how to do those natural parrot behaviors like foraging, preening properly, eating properly, exercising, and that sort of thing. Another thing that we need to watch out for in terms of parrot wellness, bird wellness, is that birds have an instinctual need to hide their pain and injuries and illnesses. And so we don't often find that they're very sick and on the brink maybe of death until it's too late, because they're such masters at hiding how sick they feel. So the best ways to tell if your bird is starting to get sick is to weigh it regularly and watch its feather condition. But also, I've got a pain assessment in one of the blog posts on my website that I will link to in the show notes, that I'd really encourage you to print out and have available, so that if your bird is starting to go downhill, you can do a quick pain assessment to see if something might be wrong, so that you could take it to the vet and you'll know what to look for, since they're so skilled at hiding that illness. If a bird in the wild starts to show that it's sick, its flock mates will literally chase it off, because that bird is going to attract predators that could kill the entire flock, for all we know. So that's why birds are so adept at hiding pain and injuries and stuff. And that's why we have to be so skilled at catching those early telltale signs that something's wrong. And the last thing that group in California talk about is what they call life stage care. So just like, a young infant needs way different care than our aging parents, birds have a life stage care needs too. And so the baby birds need to be taught, how to thrive and survive. Older birds, we need to be watching for things like pain management. Are they eating correctly? Can we get them to do, some moderate exercise, that sort of stuff. So thinking about life stage care as our parrots get older. KIWI here is a green-cheeked conure, and her lifespan is probably in the 20-ish year range. She's only 2 right now, so she's still kind of in those early, maybe teenage years for her. And so she has some different care needs than she'll have, 5 years from now and 10 years from now. 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, she'll be in what we call her senior years. Her body will be starting to kind of on the decline. So it would be like a human that's about 50 years old, starting to have those arthritic pains and that sort of thing, more susceptible to illnesses and things like that. So those are the things that we need to be watching for to improve feather condition. And one of the first things that you're going to find out that something is awry or just not right is the bird's feather condition, maybe stress bars, dull feathers, and that sort of thing. So I hope you found this video helpful. Check out my resources in the show notes, and leave some comments if you have any questions or insights or thoughts about this. And if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up and share it with your friends and on your social media. I'd really appreciate that. And subscribe to my channel. I mean, I'm always putting out new videos. I try to put one out a week. Don't always get to it, life takes over. But that's what I try to do. And so when people give me likes, it gives me a lot more incentive to put a new video out next week. So talk to you later, and happy feather caring and bird wellness training, if you will, for yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye.